I thought we had everything: laughter over midnight snacks, whispered dreams under the covers, and a bond forged through struggle and growth. My husband and I survived things that break most couples. We were the exception. At least, I believed we were. Until she came, my husband's new assistant. A beautiful, eager woman who laughed at his jokes the way I used to. What started as professional admiration quickly turned into something else. Something dangerous. This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's about watching someone slowly turn away from you, one stolen glance at a time. Part 1, The Arrival. The first time I saw her, she was wearing red lipstick that was too bold for a Monday morning. I remember that detail clearly. It stood out in a sea of neutrals and business casual. She shook my hand with a soft, confident smile and introduced herself. "Hi, I'm Clara. I'm working with Noah on the new project." I wasn't threatened, not then. She was stunning, yes, in that effortless, camera-ready kind of way. Her hair always looked fresh out of a salon, and her laugh had a musical quality that made people turn. But Noah loved me. We had a history that spanned nearly a decade. We'd navigated debt, family drama, infertility, career setbacks. We weren't fragile. So when Clara started working late with him, I didn't flinch. I brought them takeout once at the office, even joked about being the third wheel on their deadlines. Noah laughed, kissed my cheek, and thanked me for being so understanding. "You're the best," he said. I smiled and went home, never once imagining that my act of kindness would be remembered as the moment I handed over the knife that would later be used to carve our lives apart. The first signs were subtle. A missed goodnight kiss. A change in his scent, a new cologne I hadn't bought. Him lingering in the shower a little longer than necessary. I told myself not to be paranoid. Love wasn't about interrogation. Love was trust. But then came the silence. The kind of silence that fills a room even when someone's speaking. We still had dinner together. We still exchanged texts. But his eyes started skimming over me like I was part of the background. And when I spoke, I often had to repeat myself. He wasn't listening, not really. Clara, on the other hand, seemed to know everything. She remembered his favorite whiskey, what podcasts he liked, how he took his coffee. "Noah says you're not a morning person," she laughed once at an office party, handing him a steaming mug before I could. "You've trained him well." I forced a smile, ignoring the way his hand brushed hers as he took the cup. Then came the weekend he had to work. It was a Saturday. He kissed my forehead, said the deadline was tight. I offered to bring lunch, but he waved me off. "Don't worry, babe. I'll grab something nearby." I waited 3 hours before curiosity got the better of me. I told myself I was just going to surprise him. Bring him his favorite sandwich and maybe brighten his stress-filled day. The office was dimly lit. I knew the receptionist didn't work weekends. I punched in the key code Noah once gave me and walked inside. My heels echoed off the marble floors. I turned the corner to his wing and stopped. I didn't see them kissing. Not then. But I saw Clara barefoot on the couch, wearing one of Noah's hoodies, legs tucked underneath her as she laughed at something on his screen. They looked like two people who lived together. Like this was normal. My heart thudded against my ribs. I didn't walk in. I turned around, left the sandwich on the front desk, and drove home in silence. That night, he came home late. Said they'd gotten caught up working on the prototype and lost track of time. I looked into his eyes, trying to find the man I married, the man who once cried at our wedding vows, who held my hand through fertility treatments, who once said I was his home. But all I saw was a mask. Polished. Practiced. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I needed to be sure. So I waited. And the more I watched, the more I saw what had always been in front of me. Part 2, The Cracks Beneath the Surface. The worst part of suspecting your partner is cheating isn't the betrayal itself, it's the not knowing. The way you start second-guessing everything, every word, every glance, every quiet moment. You question your own sanity before you ever dare question them. And that's exactly what I was doing. I became two versions of myself. One, the composed, supportive wife who still cooked his favorite meals, still laughed at his tired jokes, still laid beside him at night trying not to flinch when he touched me. The other, a version I barely recognized, scoured text logs for inconsistencies, stared at his back in the dark and wondered how long he'd been lying to me. I hated her, but I needed her. I started keeping a journal, not of feelings, those were already erupting in ways I couldn't contain, but of facts. When he left, what time he came home, what he said, what he wore, when he showered, whether he initiated sex or recoiled from it. I wrote it all down like a detective building a case. And still, part of me prayed I was wrong. One night, Noah came home with a lipstick stain on his collar. It was faint, just a smudge near the shoulder, but it glared at me like a siren in the night. I stared at it while he was in the shower, my hands gripping the fabric like it could give me answers. When he came out, towel around his waist, I held it up. "What's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. He glanced at it, shrugged. "Probably from Clara. She gave me a hug before I left. She's always overly affectionate." Overly affectionate. My stomach turned. I nodded slowly. He didn't ask why I was holding his shirt like evidence. He didn't care to defend it further. That was the moment I realized he didn't even feel the need to lie well anymore. I should have confronted him then, but I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed him. The next day, Noah said he had another late night at the office. I kissed him goodbye with shaking hands, then waited 15 minutes before grabbing my coat and keys. My heart was thundering so hard I thought I'd throw up. I wasn't the kind of woman who tailed her husband like a spy, but apparently, I was becoming her. I parked down the block from his building and waited. For an hour, nothing happened. Then, just after 8 p.m., I saw them, Clara and Noah, walking out of the building, laughing, not stressed, not buried in work, just two people who enjoyed each other far too much. They didn't head to a coffee shop or any restaurant near the office. They walked 6 blocks to a quiet little bistro I'd never even heard of. Candlelit, intimate, the kind of place he used to take me when we were still falling in love. I didn't follow them inside. I couldn't. Instead, I drove home and cried into a pillow so I wouldn't wake the neighbors. When he got home just after midnight, I was already in bed. I pretended to be asleep while he slid under the covers. He didn't touch me. Didn't even try. 2 days later, I got my proof. Clara posted a picture on her private Instagram, a blurry shot of the bistro's signature dessert and a glass of red wine. In the reflection of the window behind it, I saw his silhouette, his shirt, his watch. It was him. I took a screenshot, saved it in a folder marked simply, Truth. That night, as he snored beside me, I looked at the man I once thought was my soulmate and realized I was mourning someone who hadn't died, just disappeared into the arms of another woman. But I wasn't ready to explode yet. No, I was going to make him feel the weight of what he was destroying. Not with a scream, not with a slap. With silence, with observation, with patience. Because the moment I chose to confront him, it would be the moment everything ended. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for the end. Part 3, The Storm Beneath the Calm. Grief has a strange way of turning into strategy. After the night I saw the picture of Noah's reflection on Clara's Instagram, something inside me began to shift. Not just sadness, not just anger, but clarity. A cold, calculating clarity I didn't know I was capable of. I started watching him differently. Every word he spoke was weighed, every excuse catalogued. I began predicting his lies before he told them, not because I was a genius, but because liars are lazy once they think they've won. "Noah, are you coming home early Friday? We could do something just the two of us." "Ah, babe, I have that product meeting. I told you. Might be a late one." No meeting appeared on his calendar. His calendar I still had access to because he had once trusted me enough to share it. Or maybe he just didn't think I'd ever look. Either way, the lies were stacking up like bricks. Heavy, solid, undeniable. Clara started pulling away from me, too. Subtle, at first. Canceling coffee dates. Not responding to texts as quickly. When we did talk, her voice was careful, as if afraid I'd see through it. I didn't let on. I smiled. I listened. I nodded. The perfect best friend, a role I had played all my life. The thing is, betrayal doesn't happen all at once. It's not a single blade to the chest, it's thousands of tiny cuts. So small you almost miss them until you're bleeding out and wondering where all the pain is coming from. I bled silently for weeks. Then one night, Noah came home late again. I waited up, not out of love, but to see how he'd lie this time. "Hey," he said, kissing my forehead like nothing was wrong. "Sorry, it was a long one. Did you eat?" "Yeah, grabbed something with the guys after." I looked him in the eyes, something tightening in my throat. "Which guys?" He hesitated, just for a second. That second was a confession. James and Rob. You don't know them." Of course I didn't. They didn't exist. I nodded and smiled. "I'm glad you had fun." He relaxed, walked past me to the bedroom, already peeling off his shirt. I followed him quietly, stood in the doorway and watched as he changed. "Noah," I said. "Yeah? Do you love me?" He froze, shirt half off, stared at me. "What?" "It's a simple question. Do you love me?" He frowned, confused, maybe even a little defensive. "Of course I do. Where's this coming from?" "I've just been feeling a little distant from you lately, like there's a wall between us." He walked over, kissed my cheek. "I've just been busy. You know how things get." "Right," I said softly. "Busy." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake while he dozed beside me, his breathing heavy and even. I stared at the ceiling and counted cracks in the plaster. I thought about how strange it was to be this close to someone and feel so completely alone. I made a decision. The next morning, while he was in the shower, I packed a small bag. Not to leave, not yet, but to spend a day away, to breathe, to think, to figure out if the woman I used to be still existed somewhere under all this wreckage. I left a note. "I need some space today. Don't worry, I'm safe. Just need to clear my head." I turned off my phone, drove to the coast, and stood on the shoreline for hours. Watched the waves crash over and over again. I envied their certainty, the way they never stopped returning, no matter how many times they were pulled away. I cried until my face was numb, screamed into the wind until my throat burned. Then I sat, and I thought. About the girl who once dreamed of a simple, happy life. About the man who had promised her the world. About the friend who knew every chapter of my story and still chose to burn the pages. I knew what I had to do. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And when the time came, I wouldn't just expose the truth. I would reclaim every piece of myself they tried to steal. Part 4, Truth in the Ashes. The thing about truth is that it doesn't stay buried. No matter how deep you try to hide it, eventually it claws its way to the surface. And when it does, it doesn't whisper, it screams. 3 days after my escape to the coast, I came back home changed. Not healed, not whole, but sharper. I was done playing the unsuspecting wife. I was done waiting for apologies that would never come. What I needed now was proof, not for others. Not even for him, but for me. For closure. For war. It didn't take long to find. The first place I checked was the guest bedroom, Clara's old room. She had moved out 3 months ago, claiming she needed space and independence again. I'd believed her. Of course I had. But the drawers still had remnants of her, a stray bobby pin, a perfume rollerball tucked behind the nightstand, a crumpled receipt from a boutique downtown, a receipt dated from the same day Noah had told me he'd been working late. It was signed in her handwriting. I stared at the paper, the ink swimming slightly as tears threatened to rise. But I didn't cry. Not this time. This time, I scanned the name of the store and drove straight there. The woman behind the counter remembered her. Yes, Clara, tall, dark hair, came in with her fiancé a few times. My breath caught. Fiancé? She nodded. They were cute. He was in here with her that day. Actually, bought her that silver necklace we put in the display last spring. I smiled. Do you remember what he looked like? She tilted her head. Tall, light brown hair, clean shaven. Oh, he had a little scar near his chin. Noah had that scar. Got it skateboarding when he was a kid. I left the store and sat in my car, clutching the steering wheel like it might keep me grounded. Fiancé. He bought her jewelry. took her shopping, played the part of a man in love while I sat at home folding his laundry and cooking his dinners. They weren't just having an affair. They were building a life. I went home, trembling, and opened his laptop while he was at work. He rarely used passwords. It was easy. His email was open. Dozens of messages between them, some flirty, some sexual, some worse. They talked about me, called me naive, blind. He said I was too sweet to ever catch on. She called me a puppy that wouldn't stop wagging its tail. I sat there, reading every last word, my hands shaking but my mind eerily still. That was the moment I stopped loving him. And I didn't just hate Clara. I pitied her. Because if she thought she won, she hadn't met this version of me yet. I started documenting everything, emails, receipts, dates. I printed it all, backed it up, hid it in places he'd never look. I wasn't going to confront him in a scream-fueled breakdown. No, I was going to destroy him with silence, with precision. The day I put my plan in motion was deceptively calm. I cooked dinner, lit candles, poured wine, played our favorite playlist. He walked in the door, surprised but pleased. "Wow, what's all this?" "Just wanted to do something special for us," I said, smiling. He kissed me. I let him. We talked over dinner. He lied. I let him. Afterward, we sat on the couch. I curled into his side like I used to. Then I asked, casually, "Do you ever think about Clara?" He stiffened. Sometimes. Why?" "I miss her." He nodded, cautious. "Yeah, she was great. She still is. I'm sure you'd know." His eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" I turned my face to him slowly, the smile never reaching my eyes. "I know, Noah." He blinked. "Know what?" I stood up, walked over to the drawer, and pulled out a folder. I dropped it on the table. He stared at it, confused. "Go ahead, open it." When he did, color drained from his face. "What is this?" "Everything, every message, every lie, every place you were with her when you said you were somewhere else. I know about the necklace. I know about the hotel. I know about the apartment in her name you're helping pay for." He opened his mouth. I held up a hand. "Don't. Just don't." He was silent, swallowed hard. "How long have you known?" "Long enough." The silence between us roared. Finally, he asked, "What do you want to do?" I looked him in the eye. Steady. "I want you gone." And just like that, I watched the man I once loved start to come undone. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Part 5, The Fallout. I expected anger. I expected tears. I even prepared myself for him to deny everything like a cornered animal. But when I told Noah I knew, when I laid the evidence in front of him, he didn't fight. He broke. He collapsed onto the edge of the couch like the truth was a bullet to the spine. I remember watching him, detached, arms folded across my chest, as he buried his face in his hands. "I didn't want it to happen like this," he muttered. I wanted to laugh. "You mean me finding out? Or you sleeping with my best friend?" His head shot up. It wasn't about sex. I know that makes it worse." "Good. You should know." He stood up, pacing now. "It started after you miscarried last year. You pulled away. You shut down." I blinked. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. "You're blaming that on me?" "I'm not blaming you," he snapped. "But I needed someone, and you wouldn't talk to me. Clara was there. She understood." "She understood you better than your wife?" He rubbed his temples. "It just happened." "No, Noah. You don't fall into someone else's bed. You climb in. You climb in with intention, with choice." There was a pause. Then he said, "I never stopped loving you." And somehow, that hurt more than anything. Because if that was what his love looked like, I wanted no part of it. "I want a divorce," I said quietly. He flinched. "Don't say that. Please, don't just throw us away." "You already did." We stood in the living room of the house we built together, the house where we painted walls and laughed on the floor and talked about kids. Now those walls echoed with silence and betrayal. "I'll give you whatever you need," he said finally. "The house, the car, I don't care. I just don't want to lose you." I shook my head. "You already did." That night, he slept in the guest room. The same room Clara used to stay in. I locked our bedroom door. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how many nights he came home from her bed and kissed me like nothing was wrong. The next day, I met with a lawyer. Divorce was messy, even when there were no children involved. We'd been together almost a decade. Assets were tied, names entangled, memories hard to erase. But the legal part was the easiest. The emotional wreckage? That was something else entirely. My mom cried when I told her. I thought he was such a good man, she whispered. He was, I said, to everyone but me. Clara never reached out. Not once. I expected some kind of confrontation, a text, a call, anything. But she disappeared like smoke after a fire, vanished from my life, leaving only ashes. A week later, I bumped into her. It was at the grocery store. I was grabbing milk and grapes, mind blank, when I turned a corner and saw her, standing by the bakery, holding a baguette. She froze. So did I. Hey, she said, eyes wide. Hey. She looked tired, paler. Guilt does that. I didn't mean for it to happen, she began. You didn't mean to sleep with my husband? She swallowed hard. I loved him. You loved me. I snapped. You were my best friend. You watched me cry over that man. You came to my wedding. You were in my wedding. And you were sleeping with him the whole time? No, not at first. I wanted to scream. That doesn't make it better. She took a step closer. I stepped back. I'm sorry, she said, her voice cracking. I was lonely. And he was? Don't. I made a mistake. No, I said. You made a choice. I left my cart behind and walked out. My heart pounded like a war drum. Outside, I sat in my car for 10 full minutes, gripping the steering wheel, breathing through the storm inside me. I thought I was over it. I thought confronting Noah, making my decision, walking away, I thought that was the hard part. But seeing Clara, seeing her face, broke something all over again. Because it reminded me of the life I lost, of the person I used to be, before the betrayal burned through everything. And the truth is, I didn't want them to hurt. I wanted them to ache. I wanted them to feel every ounce of the pain they caused. But revenge wouldn't give me peace. Only freedom would. So I drove home. I poured a glass of wine. I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by the silence of a life I was starting to rebuild. And I told myself, this is the fire. But I am not ashes. Not yet. Part 6, Ashes and Embers. The house felt too big without Noah's footsteps echoing in the halls. Too quiet without the gentle buzz of shared mornings or the mundane back and forth of evening routines. But that silence, at first unbearable, slowly began to sound like freedom. In the beginning, I didn't know who I was without him. We'd been us for so long that I'd lost track of me. Even now, brushing my teeth or making coffee came with a sting of memory. How he used to steal sips from my mug or kiss the back of my neck when I wasn't expecting it. But routine is a stubborn friend. Eventually, I stopped setting 2 plates. I stopped looking at my phone waiting for a message that wouldn't come. I started walking in the evenings, headphones in, trying to outrun the echoes of my own thoughts. Grief is not just for death. It visits you in the shape of things you can't have back, the version of your life that you pictured, the future that now will never be. And still, I showed up every day. I showed up when I didn't want to get out of bed. I showed up when the loneliness felt like it would crush me. I showed up when everyone else expected me to fall apart, and I did fall apart, but I did it on my own terms. One night, weeks later, I sat with my mom in her kitchen, helping her peel potatoes for dinner. You look stronger, she said, not looking at me. I nodded. I feel like I'm finally breathing again. I always liked your fire, she said with a smile. Even when you were 5 and telling your father you'd run away because he made you eat carrots. I laughed. It felt real. Do you ever think I could have stopped it? I asked suddenly. What? Noah, Clara, the betrayal. Do you think there was something I missed? Something I could have done? She wiped her hands and took mine across the table. Sweetheart, people don't betray you because of who you are. They betray you because of who they are. Their cracks, their cowardice, their choices. It's not your burden to carry. I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear that until I felt tears pooling in my eyes. After dinner, I went home and took a long, hot shower. I watched the steam curl against the mirror and thought about everything I'd survived. I thought about the version of me who believed love could protect you from everything. And I whispered an apology to her. She didn't deserve this ending, but maybe, just maybe, she deserved what came next. A few days later, I got a message from an old college friend, Harper. We hadn't spoken in years, but she'd seen my name pop up in a mutual group chat. "Hey," she wrote, "I just moved back to town. Want to grab a drink sometime?" I hesitated. For so long, my world had revolved around Noah. His friends were mine. His schedule was mine. Even my weekends had once depended on his. Now, I had all this time and no one to fill it. I typed back, "Sure, let me know when." Friday night, we met at a small bar downtown. It wasn't fancy, exposed brick, Edison bulbs, soft indie music, but it felt like the perfect place to start again. Harper looked the same, a little older, a little wiser. We ordered cocktails and slipped easily into conversation. No pressure, no pity. "Are you seeing anyone?" she asked. Somewhere between our second and third drinks. I shook my head, not even thinking about it. "Probably smart," she said, "after what you've been through." I didn't correct her, but it wasn't about what they did anymore. It was about what I needed. That night, I walked home alone. The city lights blurred slightly from the buzz in my head, and I thought, I'm going to be okay. I don't need Noah. I don't need Clara. I don't even need to forgive them. I just need to keep walking forward. Of course, healing isn't a straight line. The next morning, I saw a photo on social media. A mutual friend had tagged Clara at a baby shower. She was glowing. Pregnant. My stomach dropped. I didn't want it to be his. I didn't want to care, but I did. The caption read, "So happy for you, Clara. You're going to be the best mom." No mention of the father. I shut off my phone. The thing about wounds is, they reopen at the worst moments. You think you're fine, and then life jabs a finger right into the bruise. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood up. I made myself breakfast. I opened the windows wide. Let the past come knocking. I wasn't answering anymore. Part 7, The Quiet Aftermath. The weeks after I saw Clara's pregnancy announcement felt like living inside a storm that never quite passed. My emotions were a constant tide, rising and falling unpredictably. Some days, I was numb, going through motions like a ghost haunted by memories. Other days, the ache hit raw and relentless, as if the betrayal was still fresh. What surprised me most was how often I caught myself replaying moments from our life together, small, insignificant moments that suddenly felt like clues I'd missed. The way Noah's laughter changed, the nights he claimed to be working late but never brought his laptop home, the quiet tension I'd blamed on stress. I realized now that I had been living with a stranger wearing my husband's face. One afternoon, I found myself wandering the park near our old apartment. It was where Noah and I had first said "I love you." The bench beneath the sprawling oak tree was empty, inviting. I sat down, my fingers tracing the rough grain of the wood. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. Should I call him? Should I confront him one last time? The words I wanted to say tangled in my throat, and I realized the truth. I didn't need closure from him. I needed it from myself. Later that evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. Writing had become my refuge. I poured out everything, the heartbreak, the anger, the shattered trust, and the tiny flickers of hope for what came next. It was messy, painful, but healing in a way that talking never was. The more I wrote, the clearer it became. I wasn't going to let this define me. One night, I went to a support group for people recovering from infidelity. I was nervous. The thought of strangers knowing my story was terrifying. But when I walked into that circle of broken souls, I felt less alone than I had in months. There was Sarah, whose husband left her for his secretary. Mark, who struggled with addiction and lost everything, including his marriage. And so many others whose stories were different but whose pain felt familiar. Sharing my story was harder than I expected. My voice trembled, my hands shook. But when I finished, the room filled with quiet understanding. People nodded, shared their own struggles, and offered words that felt like balm to my wounded heart. Outside the meeting, a woman approached me. "You're stronger than you know," she said softly. "It's going to get better." I wanted to believe her. Days turned into weeks. I started rediscovering old passions, painting, hiking, even taking a cooking class. Each small step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost in the shadow of betrayal. But the hardest part wasn't moving forward. It was the quiet moments, when the loneliness crept in and whispered doubts. Was I enough? Could I ever trust again? Would love ever feel safe? One morning, I found a letter slipped under my door. No name, just a simple message: "You are not alone. Keep fighting." It was from someone who knew the pain, the betrayal, and the slow, painful road back to hope. For the first time in months, I smiled. I wasn't just surviving. I was beginning to live. Part 8, the final chapter, Rising from the Ruins. The letter I found that morning stayed with me longer than I expected. That simple message, "You are not alone. Keep fighting," felt like a lifeline thrown across a chasm of despair. For so long, I'd felt swallowed by silence, as if no one truly understood the depth of betrayal and loss I was navigating. But now, I had proof that others had walked this path and survived. And maybe, so could I. In the weeks that followed, I made a quiet but firm decision: I would reclaim my life on my terms. I started setting boundaries, with Noah, with Clara, and even with the versions of myself that wanted to retreat into pain or bitterness. This process wasn't linear or easy. There were nights when tears stole my breath. Mornings when I questioned everything I thought I knew about love and trust. But gradually, the fog began to lift. I began seeing a therapist, someone who didn't just listen, but challenged me to confront my fears and insecurities head-on. Together, we unpacked years of buried feelings, dissected the toxic patterns that allowed me to stay blind for so long, and most importantly, rebuilt my sense of self-worth. It wasn't quick, it wasn't painless, but it was real. One evening, months after the betrayal first came to light, I stood in front of a mirror and looked at myself. For the first time in a long time, I saw more than the broken pieces. I saw resilience. I saw a woman who survived unimaginable pain and refused to be defined by it. A woman ready to trust herself again. Noah reached out once more. His words were apologetic, regretful. He wanted to talk and maybe find closure. But I knew what closure really meant: boundaries, respect, and the strength to say no. I told him that while I wished him well, my journey no longer included him. His chapter was over. As for Clara, our tangled history was complicated by shared grief and unspoken anger. But time softened even that wound. We never restored the friendship we once had. But I learned to forgive, not for their sake, but for mine. Forgiveness freed me from the prison of bitterness, allowing me to walk lighter, breathe easier. Life did go on. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, hope returned. I started new relationships, not just romantic, but friendships rooted in honesty and mutual respect. I traveled, explored new passions, and found joy in small things: the laughter of a friend, the warmth of a sunny morning, the pages of a good book. Above all, I learned that betrayal, no matter how deep, doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be a painful beginning, a catalyst to rediscover your strength, reclaim your voice, and rewrite your future. This is my story, one of heartbreak, but also of healing, of losing what I thought was everything, only to find out that everything I really needed was inside me all along. If you're reading this and feeling broken, betrayed, or lost, know this: you are not alone. The night is darkest before dawn, and no matter how deep the wound, you can rise stronger, wiser, and more fiercely alive than ever before.